Well, it's over. After days of buildup, the high-stakes talks between the United States and Iran have completely collapsed. So the big question is, what went wrong? In this explainer, we're going to unpack all of it, the behind-the-scenes drama, the demands that were just impossible to meet, and why this failure could actually affect you, from global security all the way down to the price you pay for gas.
And there you have it, the official word, straight from U.S. Vice President JD Vance. It was blunt, no sugarcoating. We have not reached an agreement. He then added that he thought this was, and I'm quoting here, bad news for Iran much more than it's bad news for the United States. So right away, you can see the U.S. framing this as Iran's fault.
You know, this wasn't for a lack of trying, at least in terms of time spent. For 21 straight hours, the U.S. and Iranian delegations were at the table. Just imagine that. They were basically trying to solve decades of bad blood in a single day.
Which, of course, brings us right to the main question here. After a full day of non-stop talks with the entire world watching, how did it just completely fall apart? What were the sticking points that they just couldn't get past?
To figure that out, we've got to go inside the room, so to speak. Let's take a look at who is there, the high-stakes setting, and, well, the very strange vibe being set by the U.S. president while his team was in the thick of it.
You really have to appreciate the history hanging in the air. These talks, which were held in a lockdown luxury hotel in Islamabad, Pakistan, they were the highest-level face-to-face meeting between the two countries in 47 years. The stakes really couldn't have been any higher.
So, who was leading the American side? It was a senior team, handpicked by the White House. You had a mix of political power and, let's say, personal influence. Vice President JD Vance was there, along with the administration's special envoy, Steve Withoff, and the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner.
But here's where the picture gets a little weird. While his top guys are in this 21-hour marathon session, what's President Trump doing? He's telling reporters whether we make a deal or not makes no difference to me, right before heading off to a UFC fight in Miami. That kind of casual attitude just cast a shadow over the whole thing.
Okay, so with all that context, let's get into the real core of why this thing failed. This is where you see why, even with this historic meeting, the two sides walked away with nothing. And this is really where it all fell apart. Look at these lists. The U.S. was essentially asking Iran to completely change its entire national security strategy, ditch nukes, stop the missile program, and cut ties with its allies in the region. And in return, Iran wanted its frozen money back, yes, but it also wanted security guarantees, basically protection for itself and its allies. Each side was asking the other to give up its most fundamental strategic positions. The gap wasn't just wide, it was a chasm.
Now, from Iran's point of view, it was a little more optimistic. A spokesperson for their foreign ministry said they'd actually reached an understanding on a few things and that there were only 2 or 3 important issues left. They tried to frame it as a first step, saying, nobody really expected a final deal from just one meeting.
Okay, I know this can feel like some distant, high-level political game, but the failure of these talks has very real consequences. Let's break down what's at stake here and why this instability halfway across the world really does matter to you.
It all comes down to this one little body of water, the Strait of Hormuz. This thing is one of the most critical choke points on the entire planet. It's like a vital artery for the world's energy supply.
How vital, you ask? Think about this number, 1/5.
That's right, 1/5 of all the oil used in the entire world passes through that one single narrow channel. So when a key U.S. demand is about guaranteeing ships can pass freely, you can see how any threat of conflict there sends immediate shockwaves through the global economy. And the connection for us is pretty simple and direct. When that supply line is threatened, global oil prices jump. And that means the failure to make a deal on Islamabad could have a direct impact on the price we all pay at the pump. So, the talks are over, there's no agreement. What happens now? Well, what happened right after gives us a pretty good idea of the tense, uncertain chapter that's coming up. Yeah, instead of cooling things down, the first move was all about military muscle. The U.S. Navy announced that 2 of its destroyers had just passed right through the Strait of Hormuz, the first time they'd done that since this whole conflict heated up. It was a very clear signal of American military power in the region. But diplomacy isn't totally dead in the water. Pakistan, which hosted the talks, has already offered to step in and try to facilitate more dialogue. They're pushing both sides to keep the lines of communication open. So, there's a small glimmer of hope there. And that leaves us right here with this final critical question. The demands on both sides seem, for now, impossible to reconcile. The first big attempt at a historic deal is a bust.
So with diplomacy at a standstill and military tensions on the rise, what's the alternative? That is the very uncertain reality we're all facing today.